We don't have a symbiotic relationship with parasites, even though we'll find out that we have some good intestinal bacteria, we call them the intestinal flora, that are good for us. But here we are talking about the bad guys that are in your body that needs to be kicked out, and we don't know about them. And I just wanted to look at the slides we got to present here about these guys and how they come into our bodies. And basically, science divide them into three major categories: the protozoa, the helminths, and the ectoparasites. Basically, the protozoa are the microscopic guys, and then the helminths are those guys you can be able to see. As you can be able to see there, this guy, this doctor and the father of germ theory, R. Vishwan, he made a statement which I believe with all my heart that is a very powerful statement. He says, if I could live my life over again, I would devote it to proving that germs seek their natural habitat. Their natural habitat. What's their natural habitat? Disease tissues rather than being the cause of disease. You see, in the laboratories where the scientists are doing the work of investigating the causes of disease, there is a lot of work done on finding how these viruses, bacteria, fungi, and all these things cause disease. That we forget that these things don't necessarily cause disease, though they are infectious, but they necessarily don't cause disease. They take advantage of an environment that is actually wasting away. It only seems to me as a systematic breakdown. It's like flies that are coming to a dead animal. So when the animal dies, the flies gather around the dead carcasses and tries to lay eggs upon it, and from the eggs you have the larvae which then decompose. So naturally, you realize that they seek for a place which is a conducive habitation for them, and we can be able to continue there and see what's happening in the world today. What is it that's happening in the world today? Are people still suffering? I was surprised to see this. In the next slide there, as I was just going through, news, and this is happening. A man in China, a Chinese man, is hospitalized. For what reason? He has a couple number of worms, parasites in his brain. Last time I thought about parasites in the brain here in Kenya, I live close to the Lake Victoria, if you've heard of it. And I'll tell you that many people are suffering from brain worms. My wife was reminding me about that because why are they suffering from the brain worms? It's because it's been found that one of the things that causes brain worms around this place is what they locally call in Kenyan language, daga. They call it the small fish. And they've been found to be having a high content of parasites that find their habitation and form a cocoon in the brain. I'll be able to illustrate to you how that happens. And in one surgery, they were able to remove a bunch of parasites from the brain. Well, that was the news we saw from a man in China just a few days ago, suffering from 700 parasites in the brain. How is that in a civilized nation in this age and this time with improved hygiene, clean toilets, and clean water, chlorinated water, and so on? How is that happening today? Something we need to look at. Well, we can be able to see and know why these guys and who these guys are that are actually finding their way into our body. And you can see that in the next slide. The ringworms, the pinworms, the roundworms, these are the parasites, and they generally exist in the intestinal tract. And they are the most common types of parasites that are found there. But well, there are other parts that actually can be found in the human system, and they're less common, but they are also there, and like the hookworms and the ones that actually you will only receive if especially you feed on the host. You can see that in the next slide and there. And it's actually, for example, the worms and parasites that come from eating pork. And Bible talks about huge about this. It's an abomination to feed on swine flesh. And science has actually realized that the parasites in swine flesh probably are not destroyed at very high temperatures. And here in Kenya, everyone puts a line in the streets to actually go and receive a serving of pork flesh, swine flesh. It's something that's very disgusting, but everyone actually would agree that's one of the things that people kill to receive in the streets. It's sold often in the street. It's not something you've got to go to the hotel and get. It's sold everywhere in the street, and everyone is going for it. And we can see that it's one of the ways in which multitudes are suffering from parasites. Well, what are the symptoms of these guys when they get into your body? The hookworms, the ringworms, and we're not only talking about this here in Kenya. I'll talk about it because I've been here in Africa. We are having a lot of parasitic infection. In fact, I remember while I was in Ghana for mission, I was attacked by the malaria parasite, serious and um, um, levels, high levels of malaria intensity in my body, and the malaria parasite is just another parasite that can perhaps only be seen under microscope. But they are generally those parasites that I want to dwell with in the intestine. Well, what are the symptoms that these guys are already in you and they need to be kicked out? Where do these guys come from? We look at the symptoms and perhaps talk more about where these guys come from, because you are eating good food, perhaps even a vegetarian, you don't have flesh. But I can tell you about truth that every single guy needs to consider cleansing themselves from parasites. If you do not actually clean your foods properly, if you don't drink clean water that is well disinfected, perhaps using the disinfectants that God has given us, perhaps if you're walking barefoot, which is sometimes good, to walk barefoot is sometimes good to the electrolyzer. And at the same time, if perhaps you are not having a good hygiene system in your kitchen or even in your entire environment, in your outer house and so on. But also think about how you clean your vegetables in the kitchen and so on. These are some of the things that you might need to think about, because some of us, when we go raw, trying to take vegetable salads and fruit salads, we don't clean them thoroughly. Perhaps we need to clean them with some salt and some soak them in some charcoal, a little bit of lemon water, a little bit of fruit grade vinegar, white vinegar, wash them right there. But well, if you don't do all these things, or even if you do each and every uh, highlights that I've done, still you might be having symptoms that shows that you need to clear up the system. And that's what we are seeing in that slide there, the symptoms of parasitic infection in the gut, or even in the liver, or even in the pancreas, or even in the brain, because as you know, there is a nerve that connects the gut and the brain. Okay, we can look at that slide, just see some of the symptoms that you will be suffering if at all you are having these guys in you. Restlessness at night, one of the things. Restlessness at night. picking the nose, gritting the teeth, okay, itching at the anus, dry cough. And sometimes it even causes convulsion. There are people who are having a lot of strikes and convulsions. There are people who have been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and just having worms. If you did a parasitic cleanse, they would be good. Skin infections, nervous disorders, abdominal belly pains, diarrhea, fever. And when you look at these symptoms, most of these symptoms are very common symptoms and can be confused for other conditions, medical conditions. That's why you realize that sometimes the diagnosis of infections of parasites and worms is arrived at late in the medical procedures, because in the first instance, if you go that you have fever, or if you go that you have diarrhea, perhaps diarrhea could be common, but if you went there that you had convulsions and perhaps you have fatigue or even anemia, because these guys actually eat, they rob the good food of iron. If you go, I'm itching, I'm having some itching, perhaps they might suspect that digestive issues and indigestion and uh, issues of stomach pain, weight loss, because these parasites they literally feed on the food, and so they are competing with you in the food that you supply, and sometimes they take more than you take. They take more than you take. They block the system. When they block the system, you're constipated. They create the byproducts in the system, and this leads to further putrefaction and fermentation in the system and in the colon. And it's just a mess. Sometimes they even bore the mucoid walls of the intestine. And you realize that it's late in the day when actually the medical system will diagnose that this person is suffering from parasite. In fact, as you read, you realize that in the developed countries, this is almost a forgotten case. They don't think about it. They don't even think they cause serious conditions. And that's why, with time, people have even forgotten the routine of deworming, perhaps after every 3 months. And then for that reason, people can suffer a lot of diseases without knowing it's all about worms, right? All right, we can be able to continue thinking about that, but uh, what are some of the causes of um, uh, what are some of the causes of parasitic infection? How do they come into our body? How did these guys get into our body? One of the most uh, known causes is poor hygiene. When you have poor hygiene in your compound, in your kitchen, uh, or wherever you go to, I want you to understand. Uh, uh, in your toilet, for example, in Kenya, where we have been working in areas where people don't even think toilets. Poor hygiene is one of the most known, one of the most known ways in which parasites find their way in to the system. So, what about cases whereby you are eating a poor diet? Constipation is usually the problem. Worms are found when the stomach is deranged from eating improper food. Worms are the issue. When you eat improper food, especially a flesh-based diet, or even if you're eating flesh, they are poorly cooked. That even makes the issue worse. While when you're eating what we call rotten fruit or overripe fruits that are almost becoming breeding grounds for these guys. When, for example, you are feeding on you're feeding on dairy products, I'm telling you, it's been found that milk is one of the dairy products that can cause some of these parasitic bacterial infections, including brucellosis. And so it is well in science that milk also causes mucus, and this mucus is a way, good way to make a habitat for most of the worms. So most of the worms will find uh, a place to breed, and most of the parasites, because of the mucus, something like milk will also make the system acidic. And these parasites, these worms, they like acids, and because they like acids, I'm telling you, they are going to actually sit on the uh, onto your body and rejoice in your body. Well, I want us to look at something uh, equally important here on the germ theory. What's the germ theory? The germ theory actually is the number of the pathogen. And when you talk about the number of the pathogen, we also talk about balance and the opening size. When that is divided by the resistance of the host, you get the severity. What does that mean? That means that if at time the resistance of the host is high, what happens to the severity of the disease? It goes down. The severity of that disease will automatically go down. So if your resistance is good, and how do you improve your resistance? What you eat, drink, the hygiene around you, exercise, all these laws of health will actually improve your ability to resist these pathogens, or even to fight them if they find a way into your body. So you can be able to see that, and that is for us to think about. I want us to equally think about something else, which is important here, as it's written by one doctor, Dr. Robert Morse. What does Dr. Robert Morse say? Dr. Robert Morse says something that is interesting. Parasites are another result of milk drinking. Estimates are that 60% or more of American dairy cows are one or more of the following: leukemia virus, salmonella, and the tuberculosis virus. Furthermore, as milk and dairy product and the most mucus forming of all the foods you consume, and refined sugar is the second most. And then he says both of these foods will cause excessive congestion to build up all through our tissue. And then because of that mucus content, what will happen? Fungi, worms, yeast will actually thrive in that environment. What will we have? We'll actually have an infection. What has caused the infection? Toxicity and acidity, which has come as a result of what we eat, which has made a good breeding ground for the parasite. So then if you just undo the cause, then you realize that you're already going to have a system that is clean. And if the system is clean, then definitely you are not to fear. Even though you are to be cautious, you are not to fear as much as those who have created a breeding ground for this parasite. All right. Okay. Let's also think about this just before we wind up, as it's said by this writer, Ellen White, one of the most common, best writers, commonly read in the United States of America and all the world. She's written a lot that science do agree with today. Tissues of the tissues of the swine swarm with parasites. Wow. The tissues of the swine swarm with parasites. So it's not a new thing. Talking about a pork and the eating of pig's meat, she says that many tissues today, if they put a tissue of pig meat under the microscope, they see very thousands and millions of small microbes that are actually dwindling and making their way through that meat. When actually it ferments, putrefies in the system, the worms actually take part in decomposing it. And you know, meat takes 72 hours to go through the gut system, in the digestive gastrointestinal tract and its functions. And so what happens is if it takes 72 hours, it's sufficient for it to begin rotting. And it also hampers the digestion of the other food that you eat within the 72 hours. And that leads to development of more of these worms. And remember, the more the worm keeps there, the more it gets bigger, the more it keeps feeding. Well, it may not kill you so fast as you may think. Why? It's because the parasites want to stay there long enough, keep you alive so that they can keep getting food. So as long as you don't put anything that disturbs their being there, the guys are not going to be very aggressive, but at the same time, they are going to cause symptoms that are going to make your life very uncomfortable. And you can be able to see you're fatigued and so on. Okay. So you could be able to see, she equally saw that actually these parasites are bad guys that actually can be found in pigs. All right. She also said something which is very important. She said in the next slide there that eating of pork has produced scrofula, leprosy, and cancerous tumors. And that's why one man, Dr. Tullio Mussolini, a Japanese doctor, he said cancer is a fungus. And if we follow back, we realize that it is probably because of these microorganisms living in our bodies, which are a sign that most of our bodies are running out, that actually leads also to cancerous tumors. It's a breakdown of the system because of toxicity. And so he said cancer is basically fungus because fungus grows in a place that is moldy and rotten. All right. Just as we wind up there, I'll ask you a question. Do you have worms? It's a good question to ask yourself. Do you have worms? I think you do, because I don't know what I touched. I don't know. I touched the doorknob. I don't like that doorknob. I went to a public restroom. I don't know what in there. I walked barefoot in my compound. I don't know the dogs that access that place, how clean they were. If there are ticks, lice, or any of these things. I mean, I don't know. So my safety is having a routine cleanse program. So how do I go about this apart from keeping the 8 laws of health which God has given us? Keeping the 8 laws of health that God has given us. Fresh air, sunlight, good nutrition, clean water and hygiene, proper dressing. What I mean, dress too long, a dress that sweeps the ground. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna carry all the bugs and all the eggs of other worms. If you're in place like us, even places where people openly defecate, I'm going to carry them just because of improper dressing. If I don't cover myself properly, if I don't put the necessary precautions to keep away the worms, I am going to have parasitic infection, worm infection. All right, so I'm going to check what I eat, and apart from checking what I eat, I am to do that which is a routinal cleanse to ensure that any opportunistic case will be solved. Okay, so let's go down there and just see how we could be able to solve this parasitic cleanse. As simple way, and I'll go through this very fast, is steeping, a basic steeping of pumpkin seeds. If you can steep pumpkin seeds and then drink it, if you can be able to steep perhaps water, a garlic water, and drink that, that will be powerful. If you can be able to have herbal laxatives like senna, cascara sagrada, and mandrake, that's good. Well, other things that you could be able to do is you can be able to have all these combined together, do a 3 days fast, and after doing a 3 days fast, on the fourth day, or rather, fourth day or the end of the 3 days, you just have your milk there, warm your milk, and sit on that milk. When you sit on that milk, they are going to sense that milk and come through the rectum, through the anus, and you'll be able to see them. When they are exposed to air, they'll definitely die out after some time. So that's important for us to think about. That's a very basic way. But, well, there are other ways of cleaning, the other ways of actually doing a cleanse, apart from just that, which I know equally you can use, as you can see in the next slide, you can use a black walnut tea. Very, very important. Well, yes, you can use a black walnut tea or tincture or oil. It's very powerful. You can add wormwood to it. And in many cases, when you're doing a parasitic cleanse, it's proper to fast so that the guys, when you give them something like milk there to drink, they'll be coming for it. They'll be starved when they're in the stomach there. So if you give them walnut tea, ginger, and wormwood, that will discourage the parasites. Oh my God. All right. So that will discourage the parasites, and discourages the parasites. What will happen is the parasites will starve for those 3 days. When they starve for the 3 days, on the fourth day or on the third day, put a milk in a bucket, and after putting a milk in the bucket, you are going to sit in that milk in your restroom. When you sit in that milk, you are actually going to have the worms come down there. So some of the cleanse programs will actually kill the parasites. Some will pipe them out live, whichever way. But what you want is to get them out of the system. Well, what we use commonly are pawpaw seeds, which we actually grind the pawpaw seeds, and we take a tablespoon in hot water 3 times a day for 1 week. That's for 7 days, which is equally a good thing. I didn't put that in the notes, but it's something that we are also doing. Well, we can do a couple number of other remedies which are known, but this one will work. Some people are using the sap of green papaya, which is also good, especially for bilharzia cases and so on. So that's important, is a way you can cleanse. And last time we talked about enemas, the good ways of cleansing. Okay. As you can see in the next slide down there, cholera, for example. I put this here because cholera is very common. And I know that one of the ways of dealing with cholera is to restore hygiene. Hygiene is the best way. But just in case it attacks, like if you do send us around these places, hey, what are you going to do? Lemongrass oil is very important. And remember, during the Spanish flu, lemongrass was hugely used. Pumpkin seeds, prickly ash berries, cayenne, 1 capsule 3 times a day, good. Garlic, 5 capsules 4 times a day, 1. Mandrake, black walnut heart, garlic enema 3 times a day. If you go through this regimen and you maintain hygiene, you drink water, and you follow the laws of health, most probably God is going to bless your effort. Okay. I put that there because cholera is very common here. And you could be able to see that picture which shows a brain which has been attacked by worms. They come eat and then they go through the nerve, the vagus nerve connects the gut to the brain. They go through and they stay in the brain. And so you have headaches and you have all those things. I mean, it's crazy. You are tired. And remember, if it goes through the vagus nerve into the brain, what happens? Man, it's going to go to the hypothalamus, and that's where your emotions are controlled. So even your Christian character development aspects gonna be interfered with, easily get irritated and get and things like that. Your emotional mood swings are going to be developed. So you want to be sure that you get these things out so that you can be able to use the means that God has given uh, develop character. Well, so there you can be able to see right down there is a picture of worms just coming off uh, the body. Worms just coming off after detoxification, after parasitic cleanse, and it's just amazing to see that actually God can get these guys out of us. I am glad that if we surrender our lives, God can take that sin out of us. He can cleanse us and purify us and remove that parasite out of ourselves, the parasite of sin. And that's why Jesus Christ is right in the most holy place at such a time as this. Friends of Jesus, we are told uh, by Sister White in 382, paragraph 3 of Guidance. And I want to end with this just to help you recap. In 382, paragraph 2, in our last slide there, she says, and it's fun for you to see this, she says, people continually eating flesh that is filled with tuberculosis and cancerous worms. Tuberculosis, cancer, and other fatal diseases are thus communicated. The germs of cancer, the germs of tuberculosis, the germs of all these diseases are hugely communicated by living a life which is largely flesh-based diet. And if we turn away from an animal-based diet into a plant-based diet, we will not eliminate 100% parasitic infections in worm infections. But the truth is, we will actually provide larger degree an environment which will not accommodate the infection by parasites. So we want, as possible, preventive measures, so preventive curative rather than curative medicine. And when we follow that path, God wants us to follow, we educate the people on the laws of health and how they can be able to achieve good results in case they are infected, or just have a routine cleanse by one, ensuring they keep the laws of health, number two, eating right diet. But at the same time, you need also to populate your gut flora. When they go high, the bad guys go down. So you want the good flora to be up there and the bad guys to be down there. Friends of Jesus, may God, who richly bless, continue to educate you to know better how to deal with these bad guys so that they don't consume life out of you. God bless you. Thank you, Sister Emma. Back to you.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow, that was much very interesting information.
Praise
Yeah,
the Lord.
yes, it's, I have some questions. You were saying that, some parasites, they cause disease directly, while others cause
Yes.
disease by the toxins they produce, and they all
Yes.
feed on what we eat. And even some are feeding on the red blood cells, and I believe all of them
Yes.
are laying eggs inside our body. So a question is there certain time of the month when these parasites produce more eggs? And we should, is there something we can do to prevent that these eggs are, coming certain times of the month?
Yes, indeed, that's very true. That there are certain times, depending on the temperature and also depending on the surrounding environmental factors, because they have life cycles that they follow, that they produce more of the eggs. And I was just studying and I realized that some of them produce 200,000 plus eggs per time. So it's important that we do routinal cleanses by science about every 3 months. That's why we need to do it every 3 months before the population goes up any particular time. So that's very important. You mentioned a very important thing about anemia. When they feed on the red blood cells, or when they actually rob you of the foods that carry iron, they actually make you anemic and thereby make you weak. And if they do that, they make you susceptible to many diseases, because when the red blood cells go down, the guys that fight disease also go down, which are the white blood cells. You can be able to see how that works out. So it's very important for us to, and that can come by a parasite directly attacking you, or by them actually excreting the toxins from themselves into your system, which mixes and enters the blood, and impure blood. Apart from the eggs that they lay, the toxins that they excrete equally enters into the system and makes the blood dirty. If we have a dirty blood, we have a dirty system, and so disease comes.
Hmm. Thank you. So, Brother Zaddoch, have you ever had parasites yourself? You know?
Yeah, sure, sister. As I told you, we grew up in an environment where parasite is almost a common thing, even though uh, even though today it's not even in our area as common as then. But I grew up in a society where parasites was a common thing. Every time we were being detoxified even by our parents, before I had this message, I mean, you look at our waist and you see the parasite itself. And at that time, it was like something that the government had to continually educate people on doing. Today, it's forgotten unless you have personal disease. So, yes, I'm having a system.
So, yeah, maybe I should share my experience with parasites.
Oh,
I,
sure, you should share what your experience
yeah,
was like, even
you
in the
know,
cleanse itself.
yeah, I was. I don't know how I got all these parasites. Maybe because I was in Thailand many times. I have no clue. But I was listening to Dr. Jennifer Daniels, and she was talking about parasites. So I thought, oh, maybe I need to take a parasite cleanse. And
Yes.
after a few days, I saw this. They were maybe this long, 2-3 centimeters long when I went to the bathroom. And so I thought, wow, do I really, have worms inside me? And never thought about that. And so then someone said, oh, you should try MMS. And then I really got a surprise. If you can see the last slide, one morning when I went to the bathroom, if then I saw on the left side this long thing come out on me. I mean, I 180 tall, and it was higher than me. And people have asked me, what
Wow.
kind of worm is that? And I say, I have no clue. I don't know the worm world. And but people say maybe it's this tapeworm, and they can be up to 50 feet tall, and they can be in you for a long, long time, and they can lay many, many eggs, as you were saying. So I thought, wow, boy. And then someone was telling me, oh, you should try mimosa pudica seeds. And big was my surprise, if we can come back to the last picture. This on the right side, that's one parasite, but I had many of them. And boy, I felt that I was full of parasites. So
Wow.
yeah, so maybe people are motivated now to do parasite cleanse, because I didn't know I had them there. I wanted to take a parasite cleanse because some people had told me that, maybe you are thin because you have parasites in you, and then they will eat, much of the food you are eating, just like you were saying. So anyway, I think it's very interesting. I think it's very important that people consider to do a cleanse, as you were saying. Uh, some people say twice a year, some people say more often, but yeah. So thank you so much for sharing, Brother Zaddoch. I'm so thankful that you're with us here in Light Channel and sharing the knowledge which God has given to us and given to you. And just a little carrot for next meeting with you. Then you're going to talk about milk products. Do we really need them? Are they a benefit for us, or are they a kind of dangerous? And you have already mentioned it a little bit today. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you much for joining us. And please bless all of our viewers. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome, and thank you, too, Sister Eva, for inviting. God bless you.